News Nation's Robert Sherman has been tracking what's going on in Israel. He's there right now in Tel Aviv. Robert, thanks so much for making the time to speak with me. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I guess I want to start out with what's happening there in Israel, and obviously you're there, you're covering it for News Nation, but also what it means, kind of, on a personal level, because you go from, I know you've covered things like the 2024 election, obviously taking place in America as well right now, which candidates go back and forth arguing about what could make the United States better, things like healthcare and what have you. Whereas right now in, whether it be between Israel and Palestine, whether it be between Russia and Ukraine, people, innocent civilians are fighting essentially just to be able to go about and live their kind of everyday lives. I know you said you had to go to the shelter a couple of times today. Talk to me just a little bit, first of all, about what that experience has been like for you.
I would say that it is just such a rapidly evolving situation here on the ground, and it feels as though the stakes are raised every hour or two. The tension is heightened constantly here. I mean, to give you a little bit of perspective, I mean, all of this happened on Saturday here. And I mean, since then, you've really seen Israeli forces on the one hand, really pounding the Gaza Strip with airstrikes and gearing up for what looks to be a pretty significant ground assault. You've had hundreds of thousands, over 300,000 Israeli reservists called up, more than ever before in the country's history. You've had the Israeli defense minister calling for power to be shut off to the Gaza Strip, supplies to be cut off. Then you've had on the other side of the country, you've had rockets being fired from Lebanon into Israel. And now we just saw from the Israeli Defense Force, they've been talking about rockets being fired from Syria as well. I mean, it just feels as though every hour, the boiling point increases here. And I thought that you really framed this the right ways, is that when you walk around in the streets of Tel Aviv, the people here just want to live their everyday lives. The people just want to go about and just be themselves. I mean, this is a beautiful city, Tel Aviv. I don't know if you've ever been here before. Beautiful beach town, culture, restaurants. People just want to go out and experience that. And there's this cloud of uncertainty that's hanging over everyone right now. And this absolute tragedy and horrific carnage that has been wrought on this country lately. All of this is coming together, and people are waiting anxiously to see what these next couple of days are going to bring. It just feels as though the temperature keeps hiking up here.
And I mean, I guess too, there's kind of the question about came as a surprise, as many people in Israel, Israeli officials are describing it. But of course, there is the question as to how something so catastrophic could not be, at least, foreseen a little bit. Is there any indication? I mean, we're hearing, at least on this side of the world, that perhaps it's an issue with Israeli intelligence. What are officials there saying, if anything, really?
Yeah, I mean the rumblings is that this was a major blunder that was made, and we've even heard that from Israeli citizens who are, very passionate about their country. They've even have not been bashful about pointing the blame at their own intelligence agencies and their own governments, saying that there needs to be accountability to an extent, but many people in Israel wanting to unify and push forward for the time being before that accountability conversation happens. But I mean, the rumblings is that I mean, this is going to be an investigation that takes a long time in order to find out how this happened and to ensure that it doesn't happen again. It's amazing. This is that when you just talk to everyday people, there's such a confluence of emotions, but one of the big ones is this utter sense of disbelief, because people didn't believe that this could happen. People didn't believe that you could see these images of Palestinian terrorists flying in on these, on these gliders, more or less, that the walls could be breached and that you could have all of these people entering at once. People just didn't think that this was really possible. Nevertheless, all of the carnage and destruction would be wrought, but that this would even happen in the first place here. So, I mean, you still have a lot of people in the country who are still trying to come to terms with what has happened here.
And just lastly here, before we conclude, from the people that I've been speaking with, either on the ground in Israel or those people who have, a lot of knowledge, given, they've, covered, or, they've been involved in talks with other wars that are perhaps similar to this one. I mean, they obviously fear that, other countries could become involved. Even, I mean, I think you mentioned this in the beginning, other countries are starting to become involved. I guess kind of similar to what's been happening between Russia and Ukraine, where I guess there were countries showing support to Ukraine, but there were some countries who, weren't willing to show that support and were willing to stand up and show support to Russia. So are we seeing any of that kind of here where, it could become sort of a more broad conflict?
That is the big fear that a lot of people, especially the Israelis on the ground here, have. I mean, as we were mentioning, you're talking about missiles being fired from Lebanese soil. You've in the last couple of days, you had members of Hezbollah who were killed by Israeli artillery. You had Palestinian Islamic Jihad trying to enter through Lebanon, and then it seems as though some individual actors were firing missiles out of Syria as well. That is the big concern that a lot of Israelis have here is that, I mean, look, I mean, there seems to be this widely held common belief that, considering the events that were carried out by Hamas, that Israel is going to have to respond pretty harshly. And if there is a ground invasion that comes with that, the Israelis are mostly in support of that, but they recognize that there would likely be some degree of retaliation. The question is, where does that retaliation come from, and to what degree is it brought about? Does that retaliation just come from Gaza and Hamas? Does it include Hezbollah and more missiles and more strikes coming from Lebanon? Do other individual actors within the Middle East get involved here? Do other states get involved? Does Iran play a larger role in all of this? Those are the unknowns. Those are the questions that people here don't really have answers to, but certainly keeps them up at night, which is why I say that it really feels as though that every day is a new reality on the ground here. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, almost 3 o'clock in the morning here. Most Israelis are in bed. They'll be waking up in a few hours here, and they don't know what the day is going to bring, and they won't know what the next day is going to bring. I mean, that is the root of anxiety here is that who knows what this landscape could be looking like in 6, 12, 24, 48, 72 hours.
All right, we'll leave it there. Robert Sherman, stay safe. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me, Wyatt. Appreciate it.